that's what happens after progressive woman. We need to continue to grow. And it's hard.
I love this.
It's hard. I hear you. You know, it's hard because where do we have time to unpack this growth? Because day in, day out, we have these expectations, you know, societal expectation, cultural expectation. But we have to ask ourselves the expectations are real, but are they realistic? And can we even fulfill them? And be honest with yourself. So we need to find that space to reflect. And I think that's why I'm happy where I am, because I have that time to reflect.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm Sarah, and you are with me on Nusantara Women Conversations. This is the final episode, actually, of the first season of Nusantara Women Conversations before we go on a break for Ramadan and Hari Raya. So once again, you are watching this first live on Instagram, and then you can listen to this on the Nusantara Women Conversations podcast, and also watch this whole thing again on YouTube. I'm just really excited to introduce my guest, Oniatta Effendi, or Kak Oni, as I call her. Oniatta, or Kak Oni, is a cultural entrepreneur, and she also considers herself to be a proud child of the Nusantara. Kak Oni has a clothing line, Baju by Oniatta, and she's also the owner of Galeri Tokokita. And her entrepreneurial journey has since brought her clothing line to Paris last year, when she was part of a week-long showcase and represented Singapore with a few other designers. Kak Oni is also, she has always loved artistry, and she's also been an educator for over 21 years at various institutions. I just want to hear from her directly. Very excited for her to share her own story. So I am going to invite Kak Oni. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kak Oni. How are you?
I'm good. I just had a lovely dinner, just got my head in the right space, and I'm all set to have conversations with you.
Yes, I'm very excited to hear from you as well. So earlier, let's just dive straight into it. Earlier, I have shared a brief introduction of you, but I'd love to hear from you. What is your story?
Why you just jump into it like that, huh?
I did. I just did.
Okay, so what's Oniatta's story, right? I mean, I thought long and hard about this because where do I even begin? I come from a small family, mom and dad, sis and I. So my mom decided to have me 11 and a half years after my sister was born. So imagine the age gap between my sister and I, who is 11 years older than me. We spent a good time of our childhood living in Johor Bahru. So imagine the crossing of the causeway to go to school every morning as a primary school kid for about 3 years. And some of my years as a teenager in Indonesia, because my sister was then married to an Indonesian in Jakarta. So I spent quite a good number of years and forming lots of friendships in Indonesia. I've always loved storytelling as a child. I thought of a few anecdotes to share in telling the story of who I am. One is this: in primary school, I was a recalcitrant in not wanting to speak Malay in Malay class. So my cikgu had a very hard time and called my mother, to which my mother was also guilty of this. So until now, I blame her because I said, you are the nenek that is English speaking, and therefore my children don't speak Malay at home because you don't want to speak Malay, mommy. So the cikgu was
blame the mom.
So the cikgu was upset because Oniatta tak nak berbahasa Melayu di dalam kelas, and she put me up for a storytelling competition. And then I told the story, and I won first prize. And then the next year I wanted to take part again, and I won first prize again. And then the cikgu decided Oniatta had to be banned from storytelling, Malay storytelling, because I was giving chance to other classmates, right? So the English department decided to kind of promote me to play Pippi Longstocking in a fancy dress competition at primary 6.
Wow.
Moving fast forward, secondary school was a blast. I was in a girls' school at KGS, and then I went to do drama at A levels in VJC. And this was my first setback. I think I didn't make it through the A levels the first time round. I didn't do well enough to get into university. I had a full cert, but didn't do well enough. I wanted to go to Polytechnic just to save my face. Like you go to a college, like it was proud. We were proud that it was like the best junior college in the East, blah, blah, blah. But I failed. And my mother said, no, you do it again. And I did as a private candidate. And I spent 5 years after that as a teacher. in NTU NIE. In between, I took on my first job as a TV presenter with what was known then as Singapore Broadcasting Corporation, in a program called SBC, kan? In a program called Disney Club Singapore. And it was my first job, and it was frightening because people who were auditioning for it were all kachokan, you know, like mixed blood, the German Chinese, the French Chinese, and then here was this Malay girl that had 30 seconds to introduce herself. I didn't think I was going to get it, and Disney is very stringent with these things, but I did, and that was my first job as a young lady, and also my first experience in television at the age of 18. So back to the university, I mean, I spent 5 years in uni doing. Despite the fallout with drama in JC, I went back to do drama and performance and English language as my majors, and then I completed it and served my bond as a teacher. I loved my job. My ex-students, who are still now friends with me, call me Miss Effendi, which was what I was known as, because I took on my dad's name at that time to give that sense of authority that I am Miss Effendi. And they remember me for being a no-nonsense teacher that would throw you out of class had you not read Act 3, Scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet.
You were that teacher.
I was that teacher. I spent 21 years as a teacher, not just with MOE. I left and then I did research with Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice at NIE. And then I went into freelance because I got married and had children. And then the marriage didn't work out, and then you want to rebuild it. And in between, I was in my last lap of teaching, I was at a polytechnic as well as the oldest arts institution in Singapore, NAFA. And now my mother puts it that belajar tinggi-tinggi, lepas tu sekarang jual kain sahaja.
Gitu. Sahaja ya.
Okay. Jual kain. Buat apa mami hantar pergi sekolah, sekarang jual kain, she says. Of course in jest. I'm also an active applied drama practitioner, which means I take the work of drama into spaces like the boys' home, into halfway houses with men with addiction issues, and I use it as a tool to encourage young boys to reflect and think about their journey and where they want to go and what their dreams and aspirations are. The Oniatta now is, as you mentioned, a cultural entrepreneur who rolls around in batik, as you can see. I founded Baju by Oniatta in 2016 as I was also dabbling, having the full-time job as an educator. And I founded Galeri Tokokita in 2019, which is the space itself. I'm also a mother of 5 children, aged 7 to 18, and also a stepmother to 3 young men of boys in their 20s. I'm also a caregiver to my elderly mom and dad. So if you ask me, what is your story? I probably say Oniatta's story is that of a modern, educated Malay woman whose journey had led her to play many roles and now has arrived at a role that she really does want to play.
Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy to hear that. You know, you feel like you've arrived in this place where you feel at peace and at ease as well. And it has been a journey. I mean, wow, that has been an incredible, remarkable journey that I can hear just from you sharing that you really own each part, you know, the whole process as well. And what I'm hearing is just, you know, despite everything that life, I guess, threw at you and how it's been, like there's purpose, I think, that's connecting through. And can you speak to this a bit more in terms of what do you think your purpose has been that has the thread that has, you know, kept it all together for you, and when did you find it?
I think purpose, as a 20-year-old Oniatta, it was a very different sense of purpose that I probably had. I think, thinking about it, she was that girl that had a very secure job in civil service or public service. She was comfortable doing that and thought she would probably retire as a teacher for many, many years. And a lot of my friends are doing that, but I wasn't able to fit in, I figured. And so I was constantly trying to figure out where would I belong in a space that would value the voice that I had. And it was a struggle belonging to certain institutions, you know, as an educator. There were conflicts that I don't regret having to face. And then now the 40-something-year-old Oniatta, I'm 48. Oh my God, I'm 48 this year on Hari Raya.
Wow, double celebration.
Right, and I'm an Oniatta that is very much at peace with that almost tumultuous journey that she went through in her 20s and then 30s, and I'm very at ease with where I am right now, and I'm happy, and I'm in a happy space. I mean, look, at 29, I was just telling my kids when they ask you, what were you thinking when you got married? I just told them at 29, I was panicking, girls. I told the girls, you know, and I was worried that if I don't get married now, my eggs are going to sit on a shelf and expire. I actually thought such awful thoughts about myself, right? And then at 41, I still had another kid. What nonsense is this, right?
Oh, wow.
So you give yourself these societal pressures and expectations, but you evolve and you grow, and I think that's important.
Thank you for giving me hope just by sharing that. No, really. I mean, you know, I just turned 31, and I am definitely on this journey of, you know, discovering, still on that journey of self-discovery. And I think, you know, my 20s was just, 20s is just tiring and exhausting and painful. I wonder what that was like for you. And I want you to unpack that as well, because that was a journey in itself that you went through. But now here you are at 48, mashallah. And like, you know, hearing that you feel at peace and happy, I am excited and I'm hopeful that, you know, this journey that I'm on, I'll just continue to grow and continue to evolve. And that's why I love, you know, I do love speaking to older women too, and just hearing, you know, the different stories that they have, really. So I want to go back to your early 20s and unpack that a bit. So what was that like for you?
It was a very happy time. I loved my 20s, actually. I really loved it.
Oh, you did? You know? Okay.
I mean, after the whole failure of the A-levels and then getting into university, I loved NIE. I had the best of friendships and experience, and I really understood what learning was about. I had the best of teachers like Ko Pao Kun and Rani Murthy and Max LeBlanc. I mean, these are like legends when you think about it right now. You know, I was in Ko Pao Kun's class, and he had taught us about Geylang as a space, and I had the adventure of unpacking a particular seedy site of Geylang. At once upon a time there was a place called Datuk Raja, which is where, do you know what Datuk Raja is, Sarah?
No, I just went,
It is actually a club for orang-orang Melayu, for Malay people, and and prostitution was very active in there. So it was an experience for me to come in and see what it was about, and not in the guise of a drama experience. I had to lie to my mom because, you know, mom would not allow you to enter Datuk Raja. But when you think about it, you form certain things in your head about how this world is. It was really interesting. It was funny because when I was in there, they were playing Bon Jovi, and I remembered the song, You Give Love a Bad Name, and we were all jumping on the dance floor, right? And suddenly the next minute, the live band played Tepuk Tepuklah Tangan.
Oh, wow.
And I had a cultural shock, like,
what a shift.
So you see, I had this experience, and I enjoyed my 20s. But if you move it a little fast forward, the 30s was a tough one. The 30s was a tough one because I thought, you know, jumping into a marriage and having children and not realizing that you could actually grow out of a relationship that you had thought you wanted to be in for the forever and ever. I mean, who goes into marriage thinking it's going to break, right? You go into marriage thinking, this is it, you know, I am going to give my eggs alive and we're going to love each other, but you grow, right? And you've got to see that your partner also grows with you or away from you and no longer with you. And it was difficult because again, it was a failure to me to hold the institution which I was looking forward to enter. And it's hard in our community when judgments are being made to someone like myself. They say, oh, Oniatta, dah cerai. And then here you have a desire to rebuild that life. as a woman, to want to find love again, to want to start again. And it was hard even. It's been 10 years since Nizam and I have been married. And I think about it today over dinner. I said, you know, when your boys tell me, Auntie, what's in the opor because it's really delicious, it took us 10 years because when we first started, the boys would be sitting at a table in a restaurant and making sure the menu does not, will cover my face. So it took 10 years to be where we are. And I think we're in a place to be proud of it and to celebrate these beautiful things in front of
The
you.
journey
Alhamdulillah.
itself. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. And yeah, I mean, you know, especially when you have kids as well, and you know, at that stage where so it's just society they can just be so painful, you know, these expectations, and you judge yourself, and women naturally, we're just the hardest on ourselves, right? And we see it as a failure on our part because we're conditioned to think that, oh, this is, you know, as a woman, this is our role as a wife, as a mom, and like, you know, all these roles that we play. And I'll go into our identities as well a little in a little bit. But I wanted to, you know, what I picked from what you shared earlier about purpose as well. You know, you said the words that I picked out were, you felt it couldn't fit in, but you had your voice, and even though they were conflicts, you continued to use your voice, to trust your voice, and to speak your truths. What has that been like, and how were you able to continue to listen and to trust it?
I think a lot of times we forget this, that as women, we do all sorts of things. We run a household, we have a job, we take care of our parents, you know, and we want to champion a lot of social issues and fight for justice. And then we realize that all this is a lot of emotional labor, you know, that we take for granted. I asked myself, you know, what was it like to be placed in a position where you were outrightly discriminated as a woman? I'll share this little anecdote with you. I may laugh because it's uncomfortable, but you know, let me tell you this. I was in a polytechnic for 7 years, 5 to 7 years, including the part-time stint. And after my 5th kid, I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And I took the 2 weeks of hospitalization leave, although I wasn't in hospital, but you're entitled to rest for 2 weeks after you go through that. And I came back to a performance review meeting, like an appraisal thing, right? Which you have to do every year. And I was asked by a senior manager who looked at me and said, "Hey, Oniatta, actually, when is this going to stop?" And I looked at her almost shocked, and I said, "Excuse me, what do you mean?" And then she laughs and says, "Is it because you are Malay?"
No.
Malay people like big families, right? So she couldn't understand why I would want to have another kid, and then because I already have 5, and maybe like I didn't understand that. I remember a nervous laughter, and I just wanted the meeting to be over and done with, and I left, and my 5th floor colleagues were saying I needed to report it, but I couldn't. I kept it for many years, even after I left, because what good would it do had I raised it to HR at that time at the risk of breaking my own rice bowl? Who else is there to hear that was indeed said and wrong and unacceptable? But you see, now we live in a very different world. You put that out, and that's it. An uproar is gonna happen. People are almost in an unplanned mess of a protest. It's very different, and I'm grateful for that journey, because I think it has formed certain views about how people think about us, and sampaikan, you know, when is this going to stop? I remember that question.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being really candid for sharing that. But I'm just so sorry that you went through that and that was your experience. But how did you then, you know, how did you find closure, I guess, for yourself? Because that's such an unsettling experience. And you're, again, someone, you know, who knows your voice, and, you know, you're someone who speaks your truth quite often, you know. How did you get closure?
I think I never did. I just left keeping that story for a long time. And I remember the first time I went public with the story was at a writers' festival where we were talking about Singapore women, economy, and power. And I raised this almost in jest about what it means to be in power and what it means to be empowered. And the audience, and here I was laughing alone, holding a microphone in chambers at Arts House, and the audience just went silent. And then I realized actually I've been carrying this for a long time without realizing how heavy a burden that was emotionally on me. And we forget about these, as I mentioned just now, emotional labor, that we need to also pace ourselves when we want to raise these issues day in, day out. Every day there's something to be angry about, every day. Yeah, I mean, we just come out of being angry about something last week in the middle of
and we will talk
COVID.
about that.
Are
you feeling much better after COVID? Are you feeling
yes,
much better and recovered?
yes,
okay.
And I have to thank you for this, because in the midst of the whole fever and all, suddenly, I did think of you, Sarah. I wanted to reach out to you before you even reached out to me and say, hey, Sarah, I want to go for a drink after I get one line on this ART kit, because this feels yucky. And I think you might identify with this yucky, but then suddenly, as if it was all written, you dropped me a WhatsApp, and I was like, ooh.
It was probably
when you asked me, I said, yes, let's do this.
It was probably all written. I mean, so many things that I believe in science. I believe that everything, science as in SIGNS science, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. Yeah, probably that was it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. And you're absolutely right. It is, being a woman, just that gender identity, right? It's really a lot of unseen emotional labor and all these things that we carry on ourselves, the expectations, just the weight of expectations on our shoulders. And we have to continuously fight that. And it's exhausting. And then you talk about, your next identity, and that's I guess your racial identity, and we look at things through an intersectional lens, right? And then it's just even harder. And
it's a hashtag that goes #penatlah sis.
Penatlah sis. Got it. This will be the hashtag for our conversation. Penatlah sis. Memang penat. Very, very penat. Actually, what does... Okay, no, I'll hold it to talk about, because I want to know what this penat and this exhaustion, how does this manifest for you, right? We'll talk about it in a bit, but I want to talk about, the multiple identities that you carry. Most of us carry multiple identities. Like, you are a cultural entrepreneur. That's your job. You are a wife. You're a mother. You are a daughter as well, and a caregiver to your elderly parents. I'd just like to know, what has your journey, to coming into your own and forming your identity, or your identities been like?
I think the role of failure is something that would probably define where I am right now. I allow for myself to embrace these identities, but also I'm now learning to give myself room to fail. And there are days that social media does not show how difficult it is caring for a 85-year-old man who has dementia. My father is 85, he has dementia, and when he had COVID, it was very difficult to tell him to stay in the room because the kids are still negative. And yet, you remind yourself of why you're doing what you're doing. And a lot of my friends remind me of these little blessings, because not everyone gets a chance to care for your parents, and I'm blessed with that. And then I have children. I have teenagers. How many of you out there have teenage children, and you wonder whose children they are? Because it's hard. It's hard. I sought permission from my daughter to speak about this, and she said, okay. My girl is struggling. One of my girls is struggling with mental health issues. And it's a very real problem. I've lost 2 ex-students to suicide because of mental health issues. depression, anxiety disorders, and so on, suicide ideation, so on and so forth. It's traumatized me in many ways. And then when suddenly your own kid struggles, you don't really know what to do. You sit in a hospital wondering what the doctors are doing with the lab tests. You wonder if she's going to make it. You wonder if once she gets discharged, is it safe to bring her back? It's a very painful journey as a mother to raise a young girl in this world that is so frightening for them as it is for us. Again, you hit yourself with this, I am a failure, Why is somebody else's daughter out there on social media her best friend? My kid's not my best friend. I don't like this experience. And yet you're put to the test to build that other identity of you as a mother. I'm still struggling with this. I want to one day be able to talk about this more freely, and not just talk about it, but perhaps advocate for some kind of change and understand why the young people feel the way they do. We no longer go into this theory of, oh, they're not resilient, because they are very different from us. You grew up in a different world from the world that I did, Sarah, because we're years apart. And what more these kids, you see. So I still am trying to find that identity as a mother with teenagers, and I'm frightened because I still have a lot more. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old that learns things from TikTok. Yeah, so I don't know how I navigate this, but I suppose you take it in, you breathe, and you tremor that you accept that these are things that Allah would like to take you on this journey with you, maybe to test us. My Indonesian friend Lina Chandra, who is the founder of Rachel House, said, Oni, ini untuk kamu naik kelas, so your promotion to the next level. And I said, aku nggak mau naik kelas. I don't wanna be promoted. This is so hard. Ya udahlah, I'll just stay at kelas ini lah, nggak usah naik lah. I'm a repeat student, But it is making progress for yourself. And maybe that's what progressive is, untuk naik kelas, ya kan? Yeah.
Kauni!
Kenapa?
No, the way you just linked it to progressive, but thank you so much for sharing that. I cannot even begin to imagine what it must be like, and I really hope that you have the support you need, in a community of other moms who have teenagers. And I have a 3-year-old daughter. She's only turning 3, and I know how fast time flies, but it is so scary just thinking about raising her in this world. Just being a woman and knowing how hard it is, and then being a minority woman and knowing how hard it is, it's scary. And I cannot begin to imagine what you must be going through right now, but I hope you have the strength and the support you need, and know that, at any time we're here. There are many of us who are watching, who are giving you really, really words, really kind words of support. I have, Amelia saying, I feel you only about teen daughters and mental health. It's so different now compared to how our parents were with us. There is really no guidebook. We try our best, our parents, and as parents, and absolutely, I think, I don't have a teenage daughter yet, but I can definitely relate. I will. But I can definitely relate to being a mom and how we constantly feel like we're not good enough, but we are doing our absolute best. And I think mom guilt will always be there, and we'll always constantly feel it. And it's hard to reconcile, but I like to think that it's not productive, that mom guilt is not productive. And to just remind ourselves that, we just have to be as secure emotionally and mentally as we can for ourselves. So then we can, be there for our kids, and hopefully they turn out better than us. So thank you so much for sharing that journey. And I hope you know that you are doing your absolute best, and none of this is your fault. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Why you nangis? You don't cry.
I am an emotional person.
No,
I know, but I told you this. I am a very emotional person, and I'm not ashamed of crying. But it is, I tend to take on other people's emotions and can feel that quite strongly. And I'm learning that that's a strength. Again, this is my, my journey of yeah,
Your way of
learning that I am. Sorry?
It's your way of also processing some of these thoughts that are going through your head.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it is very, it is heavy to carry. I can feel that it's very heavy for you to carry, and I kind of, I feel that weight as well. And but I'm glad to hear that, despite all of it, that you do feel happy and you are in a place where, you're at peace and happy as well. Thank you for sharing your different identities, how you reconcile them. And just how, how it just constantly works in progress. Like, even though, you feel like you're set in one identity, something else is not really, not complete, but just not there yet. And it's constantly evolving. So thank you so much for sharing that. And because this is called Nusantara Women Conversations, I'd love to know, what does being a Nusantara woman mean to you? Why do you laugh?
because I think the Nusantara woman is in all of us, and I've always seen myself as a Nusantara, a child of the Nusantara. And I never really understood that, because I wanted to connect myself with the larger world out there, that beyond being a Singaporean, it was important for me to acknowledge that I exist in a Nusantara, in a space that embodies my grandparents from Indonesia, and my identities as someone who is very closely related to Indonesia and even Malaysia, and so I'll share this little story in Indonesia, in France, sorry. So I was in Paris last year in October for about 2.5 weeks, in which I had 1 week in Paris for this showcase, kan? And so I brought my way, and there was a vernissage, which is an opening night, and all the ambassadors from Southeast Asia arrived. So it was quite interesting to see all the energies of someone from Brunei, from Malaysia, and then Indonesia sent the ambassador's wife, which for me is more important than the ambassador, karena ibu dubes, kan, ibu duta besar, and not the duta besar himself is here. So we spoke about my heritage and my love for batik, and why I do what I do. And then her entourage comes, and she says, ini kenalin, ini Mbak Ibu Oni. Dia itu desainer Indonesia yang menetap di Singapura. So I'll translate that for those of you who don't speak Indonesian. Wow. Hey, here, come. This is Oniatta. She's an Indonesian designer who is based in Singapore. Wow. And automatically I go into, salah kan, that's wrong. So I automatically just, maaf ya Bu, saya harus betulin karena sebenarnya saya sih orang Singapura, tetapi sering bolak-balik ke Indonesia dan bermain sama pengrajin, try to explain that I'm Singaporean lah, kan. Because Pak Mi says, you want to claim me, is it? But then she looks at me and says, iya sih, tapi kan nenek kakek kamu dari sini, keluarganya kan masih di sana. Jadi, Ibu Oni, you're one of us. With that smile of the Duta Besar's wife. And I realized, Oniatta, I like slapped my face, like internally, I was like, don't accept it. Accept it. Be gracious. This is what you want, right, Oniatta? You've always counted yourself as a child of the Nusantara. And here is Duta Besar's wife that says, you're one of us. She is welcoming you into a larger space, into a larger view, a lens, to change that lens to see that you're part of that Nusantara. So why are we so fixated about saying, oh, but I'm Singaporean. I'm Singaporean. Yes, I am. But if someone accepts you as part of the Nusantara, your response is, and this is what I said, kalau begitu ibu saya terima sebesar-besar hati dan saya terima kasih banget. I said, thank you very much. I will accept that with the biggest of my open heart, and I will accept the fact that you have made me a part of you. And I think that's the biggest accolade I ever received as someone who plays with batik, right? For the ibu dubes to see that. Jadi kita bersangka baik lah. I think you think good things about what people say instead of wanting to, again, emotional labor. You want to fight and say, no, I'm not. I'm Singaporean. I am, but yes, I'm part of this Nusantara as well. So I think that's that Nusantara women. And I've always been asked also this other question about identity, kan? So what is so Singaporean about yours then? So there's always that binary thing, right? Are you Indonesian? Are you a Singapore brand? But you're Singapore brand, but then you play with batik from Indonesia. How are you even a Singapore brand? Then I had to ask that question a lot of times. So when I was part of the Made with Passion initiative, when we were looking at local brands that were made with passion, how are you a Singaporean brand? I was asked. The batik is from Indonesia, and I really didn't have an answer then except I'm Singaporean. I'm from Singapore, and we discussed this in France because we have like Marais who has a shoe business. I mean, he makes shoes. He's a shoe designer. He's a Singaporean, a Malay boy from Singapore who went to Tanjung Katong, the school next to mine, and then his shoes are he's in Paris, but his shoes are made in Italy. Voila, right? And then at that time, there was the other designer, Nida Shea, who was born in Dubai, but her business was set up in Singapore. And so it's a Singapore brand just as well. Do we then say, hey, no lah, you are not a Singapore brand because you are not born here? No, but we also have to take that larger, that bigger heart to also accept the neighbors around us. And I think that's what the Nusantara woman is, someone who cares about the people around her, about her neighbors, and we elevate each other as we do the things that we do.
I love that perspective so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, that was what what an experience. Did that make you feel, I don't know, because maybe I'll share like my context. I love how you also brought the word fixated. Why are we so fixated on the Singaporean identity, and what is it in the first place? And I think, I was someone who, I think I'm just really, after everything that's happened to me last year, and I felt completely thrown off my place in this home, in this country where I feel like I just don't belong, and I'm trying to reconcile my roots and all of this, and I think what's been difficult is just feeling like I just feel that conflict as well, like I am a Nusantara woman, but also why can I feel like I am more than just Singaporean? And I don't know, what was that, did that play into how you accepted the duta, the wife of the ambassador, Indonesian ambassadors, what she said? How did that play into all this for you? And has this been your experience as well? When it comes to your Singaporean identity?
I think that was quite a defining moment, and I like I said just now, I accepted it wholeheartedly, that I belong to the region, and I think then your identity grows a bit more than just being that Singapore Malay girl who goes to Indonesia and works with customers. I am a child of the Nusantara. Maybe not, you said woman of the Nusantara, but I use the word child because there's so much that a child does that women cannot do anymore. Like we can't play and we can't learn and make mistakes and enjoy discoveries. We forget because as a woman we have all these multiple roles and things to do and duties and responsibility. But the child of Nusantara is someone that is curious and full of wonderment. So let's play.
I love that. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for that perspective. Thank you for reminding us of that possibility as well. I think it's hard. And I love that you can embrace that that identity as well. And I'm just hearing how you said Singapore Malay girl who also is part of this region, right? Like we're conscious of that. And for me, like what I'm trying to do here with Nusantara Women Conversations is to find my place in this world, not just Singapore, but in this world as well. And I think it's because for me, like I just haven't felt seen and heard, and that's why I am searching for that. I'm searching for that identity, that community, that place. And this is, I feel like a platform that hopefully we can reclaim that narrative. Yeah.
And I think you're doing a great job. I mean, if you ask me what it was like in Paris, right? Was I very bangga as a Malay woman, who brought her bicycle and 4 luggages of batik on a flight on her own, leaving behind a family that probably need a bit more of my attention, because at that time my daughter was also struggling, kan? And then we had this conversation like, okay lah, maybe mommy tak pergi lah, but no, my mother said, no, Oniatta, go. This is something you need to do, and I did, and I allowed myself to relish these moments and to be proud of it, to be unapologetically proud of it. Bukan bongkak, bukan sombong and bongkak. Not arrogance, it's not hubris. But I think we should allow ourselves to celebrate these milestones, with everyone else, not just amongst orang-orang Melayu, but with everyone else, and stand proud of that. There's a video, I think, if you can see on maybe I'll repost it later, on my Instagram. So I had a photographer capture like me cycling and some backdrops of Paris so that I can remember. And the work that I did during the vernissage, so you can see snippets of that. And then I got my dear friend Asnida Dawood to, initially it was her voice I wanted to sing the song, but having given it some thought, I said, maybe your daughter should sing this song. And it's Pak Zubir Said, the late Pak Zubir Said's composition called Orang Singapura. You know that one, right? Kalau sudah jadi orang Singapura, right?
Yeah.
So we gave the song to Asnida, and she worked with her daughter and her husband. And Shurga's voice was the voice of that song that accompanied the soundtrack that accompanied that video. And I felt mighty proud. And that song and that sound clip was played in the actual space that I was in for 1 week as part of a soundscape. And I felt that was bringing our identity through language, through music, through a voice that sung it. And not just any voice, but the voice of that next generation, anak muda. And what does that mean for her as an orang Singapura, at the age of 17? So it was a very meaningful, again, finding purpose lah. It was a very meaningful journey lah for me.
Thank you so much for wearing your identity proudly, and really, and for paving the way. And, I remember when you shared the news of you, representing Singapore in Paris, I was so proud. I felt really proud as well, just knowing that. And I think you're right. You're absolutely right. It shouldn't be just being proud of just, people from our community, but also just, all of us in Singapore. But just because we're talking about this, because representation is so important, and we don't see that enough for women like us. Like when you left and you represented Singapore in Paris, like, wow, you were really paving the way, and I really appreciated seeing that, and so other, designers, I guess, in the field of design, you can imagine that, hey, Kak Oni has done that, and I can do it too. That's what you're giving. You're giving all of us the ability and the possibility to imagine that that's possible for me too. So thank you so much for wearing it so proudly, for embracing it, and just carrying your identity really, really well. Child of the Nusantara from Singapore. I love that so much. Thank you. And I think, I like to set some context before, my next question to you. So last week, some comments were made by, a fashion designer in a public forum that resurfaced 6 months after they were first made. And she shared, and I'm going to read this so I wouldn't quote it wrongly. She shared that, Chinese women have progressed significantly faster and further as compared to their Malay and Indian counterparts. I should have added like a trigger warning or content warning before I say that, because just reading that alone and replaying that is, wow. And, I understand that you actually attended the webinar live. You were there at You Meet Live, and you shared your thoughts as well on social media. And some have actually asked, why did you wait 6 months, before you actually said something? And if it's all right with you, and if you're comfortable, I'd love to know what your thought process was like as the comments were being made, and why, again, it took you waited 6 months before saying anything. I mean, of course, because it became viral again, so there was that opportunity. But what was it like for you? What was your experience?
Why did I keep quiet? That's a very good question, actually. I think it's important to understand there is a Malay phrase called majlis orang, and it is someone's event. Majlis orang. So you are not the moderator, Oniatta. You are an attendee. You are a participant, and you function as that participant that wants to take in whatever knowledge or information that you wanted to take from a session like that. And I think we have to hormat majlis, which means respect towards the event proper. I think it's a very bad translation that I have, because majlis is such a big word, right? Like hormat majlis and majlis orang. I think the Malays would understand that. And in truth, I was very shocked because I was waiting for a response from the moderator, and I have myself moderated quite a lot of sessions, and I think the role of a moderator is one that asks difficult questions, but I suppose she probably wasn't as prepared, and it's not my role to figure out why not. But yes, I kept quiet for 6 months. I brought the clip because it was on Facebook to Mashizan when I was in Paris, and I asked, am I overreacting? You know, it was a scratch. There was a scratch right here because there were, you know, there were absurd representations. There was just, you know, it was just offensive, but in the guise of research. The idea of progression, you know, is having to adopt Western benchmarks. It was reckless. But I didn't know how to speak about this because I am a brand owner, and so is the said designer. She has a brand that she has built with her bare hands for many, many years, and it's hard work. And so I didn't feel it was my role to expose this little video, this little scratch at the back when you just need to click something on Facebook and you'll find it for 6 months. It was not my role to tear another brand down, no. But then it surfaced. I had COVID when this surfaced, and I was like, oh my God. And then I watched and saw how our Nusantara women were very, very angry. And it was a protest, right? It was a protest.
And it was really Nusantara women, because it wasn't just Malay women in Singapore, but Malay women in Malaysia as well were angry.
And I think, to be fair, I had Chinese friends who were really upset as well. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, so the first time I put up the writing, you know, it was really I was worried because the reaction was so big. And then I asked myself, oh my God, so I was feeling that way 6 months ago, and this is what it is because everyone's feeling it. So it was a melenting thing because I was shocked. I was shocked at the anger of seeing a Malay lady in a tudung saying F words on a post. You know, I got a bit uncomfortable. So I said, dah lah, jangan melenting kan, sikit-sikit je melenting melata, right? And then of course apologies were offered, so thankful for that. And then the next thing I knew, the gaslighting started. That's when I was really, really upset, and I had to say what I had to say. Not so much to name or shame people, it's out there. She made a mistake, she's apologized, but I think the larger, if we look beyond that, there is a big gap that we're not addressing, because the question that was asked is, why is it that Sipao is represented as Singapore, something to do with Singapore, the cultural identity of Singapore? I mean, you can go back to my post. I actually had a post of what was the question asked by a certain Wei Chi Yap. And if unpack that question, it really was about diversity, wasn't it? And if your answer about a question, your answer to a question about diversity is that, then we're really in a sad, sorry state. And I think that upset me because, you know, we're not addressing the real issue of talking about these differences. We don't have a platform for people to have honest conversations with each other, with people of different races, with people of our kind, and respect differences in views and the way we do things. You know, racial harmony is a big fail because there's no place for this conversation. And I think, if anything, it is a very clear indication of a systemic issue at hand, and that we can and need to listen better and to do better. And I say we, not just people who are not within the community that we're in, but everybody, even us, and that we need to own this issue just as well, you know.
Thank you so much for being open, you know, and candid about how and why, you know, it took you a while to, you know, because I can completely relate to that. And I think someone else shared in the comments here as well, you know, the am I overreacting feeling is so prevalent among us minorities whenever racist incidents occur. And I completely get it. You know, that's exactly, you know, what it is. Like, am I overreacting? You know, am I being oversensitive? And then you actually have people tell you that you are being overreacting. You know, you are overreacting. You are being overly sensitive. And it's just, again, right? Penat.
Penat lah, sis.
Penat lah, sis.
So again, it's like emotional labor, isn't it? We're carrying all this, and then if every day we have to fight like this, penat lah, sis.
But then we ask ourselves, right? And I think we spoke about this as well. You know, what next? It's like, what have we learned from last year, where I feel like so many things happened and so many things manifested? You know, what have we learned? Why are people still saying that, oh, we're being sensitive? You know, and this is something we carry. We really, really carry with us through all the microaggressions, through all the, you know, even if they're not, you know, outrightly racist, you know, culturally insensitive, whatever you want to call it. These are things we carry. And I just, how do we move on from here? What next? How do we go from here if we're not, you know, willing to acknowledge that Chinese privilege exists to begin with? You know, like it's and it's not a bad thing. Yeah, you want to say something? Go for it.
No, go ahead. You were saying something.
No, for me, when I think about this again and again and again, you know, it's like, how do we move on? And I think, and I have to admit, and I know that there is progress and things are changing and more people are having these conversations, you know, honestly and openly. But I feel like if we can't move past this, if some, you know, the highest of leaders are not even willing to acknowledge that this is our lived reality. You know, and that's just the hardest thing for me. Like, we're not saying it's a bad thing. We're not, you know, we just want you to listen to our thing, with an open heart and mind, and to acknowledge that this is our lived reality. And then from there, we can then, you know, if we can lean into empathy and recognize that, hey, perhaps this is also hard for you because you've always thought that, you know, there's complete racial harmony in Singapore, and to suddenly see this and suddenly realize, oh no, that's not true. It's hard for you, but we, you know, as ethnic minorities, we live through this, and we're made conscious of this almost every day. So I don't have the answer, and I don't think, you know, I think for us, just what we can do as individuals, as citizens, is to just be able to carry that and be able to have the confidence to carry that and have these conversations and not feel like, oh, I am overreacting, I am being oversensitive. Because for a while, it took me so long to recognize that I'm not being divisive by even raising what it is that I feel, what my lived experience is, because it is valid. But then, why am I made to feel like, oh, I'm being divisive because I'm sharing, like, this is, you know, what I feel as a minority? And I don't know how else to explain it, but what are your thoughts on this?
I don't have an answer to this. I think this will continue for a bit more, but I'm hopeful. And I think that's the way to go. I'm hopeful because there has been progress, there has been change. Years ago, if someone said something like this, no one's going to raise this. We're not. We're just going to keep quiet and take it in. Years ago, when Oniatta was told, is it because you're Malay that you want to have children some more and then you miscarried? When is this going to stop? There was no space for me to raise it because we were afraid by many things on so many levels. But look at where we are right now. However, I have to say that social media and circulation on social media, it's a good platform for things to surface, but it is not the right place to further the cause. And so it's very difficult when we go on social media and we forget certain things and our angers all over the place. This is when I say, be careful, guys. Jangan melata. We have adab, right? There's a certain value system that we believe in. And yes, there is a place for anger, but the engagement needs to go beyond social media. And that's where the answers need to be answered by everyone out there. You know, what shall we do, you know, to make these things change? And you're doing a great job, Sarah, because, you know, this is a platform where we are allowed to to celebrate our identities, to address difficult issues respectfully. And I think we need to be able to talk about these things with utmost respect. And we've found a place to raise something like this with that courage. We've mustered enough courage to talk about this respectfully. Yeah, so there is change.
Yeah.
There is
No,
progress.
there is absolutely, and you're absolutely right that social media is, you know, double-edged sword, and it's not something that you know the conversation can't carry on here. You know, I need to translate into like real life conversations and change as well. There was something else to say, but I completely missed that. But here Shikin saying there needs to be more education regarding privilege. Privilege isn't bad. It isn't. It's just the fact that everyone has it to a certain extent because power structures exist. Absolutely. I mean,
I agree.
you know, despite being, you know, ethnic minorities, we also hold privileges as well, right? You know, we're able and and there's also obviously class privilege and all of that too.
Oh my God, I remembered an incident when I was a teacher for applied work, and I did this exercise in class called the privilege walk. And I prepared the kids, you know, this is a discovery that we're going to make, and everybody lined up, and I had an extension to the activity because with theatre there's a lot of touch, right? So everybody was holding hands and they had to take a step forward if they agree with the statement, or they take a step back. And then we did it, and you know, lo and behold, in front of my eyes, and these were questions that, you know, we picked up and kind of adapted for the Singapore society, like, of our people. And then there was an incident which was so painful. There was a girl in a tudung, and they all had their eyes closed because they were not supposed to see where everybody was going. So there were three body postures that you will see. Either you are going very behind and two people are in front of you, and at some point you let go, or you are very ahead and at some point in time you also let go of your friend because you had no more space to keep holding on, or you are tied in between. It was a very interesting physical language that we were reading, but there was this girl in a tudung. She kept moving back and back, and she knew what was happening. We didn't even need to talk about privilege. She knew what was happening, and she had no more space at the back of the room, I remember, and she was just banging her body against the wall. And she took her tudung and she wiped her tears. And when I said, open your eyes and look where you are right now, it was a moment of shock. And we had to unpack that. So when we do this sort of work, there has to be a lot of responsible facilitating as well. And I think the kids remembered this for a very, very long time. I just remembered that there are ways in which, you know, the space called the classroom can do things. Then again, teachers are also shackled. I need to use the word shackled by certain realities, and it's not that easy. No. But yeah, I had that opportunity to witness that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful story and powerful imagery as well. Just thinking about that. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, we talk about progress, right? That's like the buzzword, right? So I want to know, what does progress mean to you as a Nusantara woman?
Actually, progress ni apa you ask me? I mean, like, just now over dinner, my husband said, actually, what is all this progress? I said, I look at him and I said, last time your grandmother sell kain batik from one kampung house to another is progress. My late grandmother, you know, used to sell air batu Malaysia and sew her own clothes and also sew for others as an entrepreneur. You know, last time don't have like all these words, kan? Was progress. My mother was also an entrepreneur. There's progress. So it's, to me, it's so passé, you know, that we're still trying to figure out, kita progressive ke tak? Of course we are lah, you know. But the question is, what next? So, and that's the question I'm asking myself. After we are progressive, then what? You know. So if you ask me, what is a progressive Nusantara woman, right? You don't really need to look very far lah. Like I said, it's there. The neighbor that you see watering her plants in a baju butterfly. Imagine that imagery before she heads to her desk at 9 a.m. You know, it is my 80-year-old mother who tells me I must be kind and that I won't be poor if I give or share what I have with other people. It is the Indonesian mbak-mbak and ibu-ibu, my tukang jahit, my pengrajin batik in their little kampungs and desa who are in, day out, making to uphold their tradition in order for us to uphold ours. It is my kakak-kakak in France that I experienced in October, who, when I was away and homesick, take they take me to a joint so that I can I have my sambal kangkung and sambal udang petai in a Malaysian joint, you know, where a Chinese lady from Johor had set up a business to sell. Like in France, for crying out loud, I had sambal udang petai. You know, it is that woman that who protects her kind, but she is also one who looks out for others. So not just within the community, but outside. So she's that woman that you look in the mirror lah every morning, Sarah, she's you. She's all of us. So I think the next question we need to ask is what next? Because progressive.
I love how you've framed it. I love that perspective so much. Thank you so much for sharing what you think. You know, progressive means what you, as a Nusantara, and not just a Nusantara woman, just as women as well. I feel like what was so unfortunate in all of that was how women were pit against, you know, each other that way. That was just so unfortunate, right? And you're absolutely right. Like, progress is all about what we do with the privilege we have to raise each other up together, you know.
But at the same time, I think at the same time, cautionary thing that we need to also take note of, because the world that we live in champions cancel culture, which is something I think I don't condone. In my 48 years of lived experience, there's no such thing as cancel culture until only quite recently. Because with cancel culture, when we want to cancel people, you know, where is the space for growth? When someone fails and needs to pick up and learn and do better. And that applies to us as well. So I think we need to shift the way we see things. As I said earlier, as women, we need to muster courage to speak about this respectfully. At the same time, you know, resist. Okay, so we need to resist the temptation to reach convenient explanations to avoid a difficult conversation. So we can't just avoid it. We talk about it. And that's something I need the women out there to understand, that we need to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember what I wanted to say earlier. You know, I think something that I've reflected on a lot more as well, you know, in my advocacy, is that as I advocate and in my, I guess, activism as well, there needs to be innovism. You know, we need to work on ourselves first and foremost, you know, so that we're not projecting all of it that we're feeling, our emotions, onto others, you know, and I think that's super important, and that is what could be missing, that has contributed and led to cancel culture as well, that we forget that, yeah, sure, we want to hold someone accountable, but, you know, they're human too, you know, an individual who's flawed, who can make mistakes and should be able to, you know, to learn from that, you know, because we're all humans, we're all works in progress. And I think that's
growth
something
is important. And I think because growth is very, very important. I think that's what happens after progressive women. We need to continue to grow. And it's hard. It's hard. I hear you. You know, it's hard because where do we have time to unpack this growth? Because day in, day out, we have these expectations, you know, societal expectation, cultural expectation. But we have to ask ourselves the expectations are real, but are they realistic? And can we even fulfill them? And be honest with yourself. So we need to find that space to reflect. And I think that's why I'm happy where I am, because I have that time to reflect. You know, sometimes we're in that routine of work. Okay, I'm going to take care of my kid. I've got to go to work because that's my salary and they're paying me to do this. I cannot do other things. I cannot reflect. You've got to stop for a while and take stock of things. Yeah,
completely agree, 100%. That there's so much value in introspection and you know, just sitting down, taking stock, pausing, reflecting, and just recognize that we're not perfect, we're flawed, we are on this journey ourselves, and you know, how are we supposed to contribute to society or to give to others if we're not giving to ourselves, right? It starts from there, and to recognize that we make mistakes and we can learn from them as well. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, that, you know, how you framed it as well. I'd love to leave some time for questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them. And I wanted, you know, some have already asked some questions before this session, because I asked them to share any thoughts or questions they have. And I wanted to ask you, are you happy to continue this for a bit more, Kak?
I am, but I wish I could see the comments. Oh my God, I'm so kepo.
You can scroll and you'll see some of them. Okay. But yeah, I'll ask you. So there's this, you know, this really interesting question. Why do you think you're treated like an expert in Malay fashion, but not Singaporean fashion?
Am I treated like an expert? Can I ask back the question? If I were to unpack that question, I think I've never outwardly been about Baju Oniatta has never been about Malay fashion. I have to put that disclaimer out. It's been about batik. And then only this year when I did Senandung 1974, we revisited the Malay silhouettes. Addressing the other part about Singapore identity, that one very interesting because, what does it take to be someone that embraces the Singapore identity? I cannot answer that as a designer, because does it take MBS batik pattern to appear on my batik that a minister would wear for National Day before I'm someone who is a designer with Singaporean identity? Or is it enough to be Singaporean in this instance? Someone who cares about her neighbours, which are my neighbours in Surakarta, in Yogyakarta, in Cirebon, in Garut. Is it enough for me to be remembered as someone who cares for her neighbours? That's something I struggle with. So I think, again, multiple identities. I am a Malay girl. I have a business, not just about Malay fashion, but also about batik, which again is a larger fabric, literally and figuratively, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it's really, when I saw this question also, I thought it was quite interesting because it goes back again to like the Singaporean identity and the whole concept of representation as well, right? Like I think the whole context of how that question was asked in that forum, that webinar, and like why does it seem like it's only that silhouette or that, that is representative of Singaporean fashion. So yeah, this is a great question with like so many different layers, but I thank you so much for how you've answered it. If anyone else have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to ask them as well. There's one more that came through, which I think is also interesting. Do you think Malay designers sometimes lean too heavily on a sense of Malay nationalism that excludes other minorities? So for example, Indian people from being able to engage with their designs.
Okay, the phrase Malay designers is something I need the person who asked the question to also unpack. Are we looking at ethnicity of Malay people who design? Are we looking at Malay silhouettes that are clearly a Malay silhouette that then separates non-Malays and keeps them away from wearing it? So that's something that needs to unpack as well. Malay nationalism, I think it is something you see in Malaysia for sure. People pakai baju kurung in government offices, to school on Friday, and so on and so forth. And I think there is a lot of literature that we need to understand about baju kurung and its connectedness to what it means to embrace Malay aesthetic principles that include berhalus, finesse, berguna, function, bersatu, unity, berlawan, contrast, berlambang, symbolic, dan bermakna, meaningful. So there's a lot of context that needs to be understood before we throw and say, oh, because the look is so Malay lah. But do you understand what it means for a Malay when a baju is so Malay? And I feel that if people are unable to embrace that and feel that we exclude, then maybe the business owner is clear that that's not the target audience, the journey for that business owner who makes a design as Malay as can be, like the various shops at Juchak Complex, for example. The target audience is not the larger entity of people. We're not forcing upon other non-Malays to wear the baju kurung. Is it a symbol of identity? Yes, in fact, it's so tied to our language and our bahasa and our peribahasa. Have you ever heard this? Like, apabila memakai pakaian Melayu, your mother will say this, jaga pelihara aib dan malu. So jaga the identity. Duduk jangan buat malu tegak jangan mencari seteru. Berjalan-jalan mengharu biru, bercakap jangan lidah berbulu. There are all these kata Melayu, that is so heavy and that also makes it very difficult for our young Malay people to wear it, because you don't really see Malay girl wear it and then she goes to a nightclub to terkinja-kinja, right? You don't see that because it embodies the kinja-kinja, right? You go jumping in a nightclub or something. Oh my God, I'm using the word nightclub. But you don't see that, and if you do the way I did when I was at Datuk Raja, where, you know, where things, you know, they were challenging the way I saw things, then it provokes you to think about the outfit, the function of the outfit, why we felt it didn't sit well with us. And I think these are questions that we ask ourselves, lah. What does the Malay baju mean to the Malay person? And is it wrong to exclude someone else from wearing the baju kurung? The same way a Malay person also is cautious about wearing a cheongsam that has a slit that's very high, kan? So I mean, we have these differences, and we accept it, and we respect it, you know.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to share, I have two more questions which is related to this comment I'm about to share from Shikin as well. I would love to relearn and reclaim my cultural heritage through these sorts of education. And so she hopes she can pass it on to her daughter. And she also said that hopefully you can be the one to do it. And Kebaya Society said, yes, the Malay baju kurung baju is just beyond aesthetic. Very well put. Absolutely. And so that question on claiming or reclaiming, you know, your heritage. So someone actually asked a question before this session: how can we claim our Malayness beyond clothes? And this is with reference to what you posted on social media as well, in the context of this whole saga, I guess, because you shared that you feel like we need to own you know, our Malayness. And surprisingly, some people actually said that it wasn't the right place and the right time for you to actually raise that and bring that up, which was an interesting interesting thought and interesting view. But yeah, that's besides the point. I just want to know, how do you think we can claim this beyond?
It's such a difficult question. Now, how do we claim what is ours? It's ours lah. No need to claim. Let people say whatever they want to say, but stand proud. You know, I mean, I think there are many ways we can do it, you know. Understand beyond the baju that it's all really about your relationship with the rest of the world, through your language, through the things that you say, through the things that you appreciate in life, through silaturahmi. Is that what it is? Your relationship with other people, silaturahim in Malay. And I think there's a lot of principles behind what it means to be orang Melayu that we can start reading about. We know it like because we are Malay, but we don't really know it when we are challenged to articulate it. And I'm also still learning that. And then it comes out angry, like, this is Melayu baju I, you know, this is Melayu progress, kereta I, you know. I think we've got to push ourselves beyond that to ask ourselves, what is it that we really, really want to see? And I think it's at the core of it, I am someone who champions building relationships with others. And in that's when we go back again to the listening and having honest conversations among ourselves. Are we going to wait for a syllabus to do this? Sorry, law, I waited a very long time and it never did happen. And I've left the classroom, and I'm not the only one that needs to be doing this. We all have to play a part in doing this. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that that perspective as well on how we can claim. And for me, you know, being biracial as well, you know, half Arab, quarter Jawa, quarter Minang, this has always been very confusing for me, and it's only been recently where I'm trying to claim the different heritage and trying to reconcile all of them, what it means. And I guess this is why I'm, you know, exactly on this journey of reclaiming my identity, what it even is, feeling, you know, not Arab enough, not Malay enough, you know, and all of that. But I love how it all just starts with stepping into our power, whatever it is, you know, embracing all that we are, all that we are, and wearing all of that proud. And again, you do it really, really well. And I'm so glad, you know, to have this conversation with you the past, I guess, 1 hour, 15 minutes as well. And before we leave, could you please share, you know, what is one message you have for other Nusantara women who are tuning in?
I think there is so much emotional labor that we do, that people don't see. Sometimes they do see, and that comes from just being who you are. Yeah. I think we must never forget to muster that courage to be able to speak about these things respectfully. We must never, we must resist that temptation to reach convenient explanations. It's so easy to do that. Oh, this is the explanation. When actually it is a difficult conversation that we need to have. And we need to have that. We need to ask questions. And it's all right to ask questions. And it's all right not to come to answers. But we asked. I think it's important for us as women to take that time to unpack certain discomforts, emotional, especially if it's emotional, but your identity, because that is one very good way for us to grow. And so I think we've come to an answer that beyond progressive, I think I'd like to challenge all of us to be, what do we call this? Women of growth? Oh my God, I don't know, growth, that we champion.
Grow and glow.
Grow and grow. And to find that space to be able to sit down and really reflect about this journey that we're still on, and it's going to be a very long journey, and we've got to stay the course because we've only got us.
I love that so much. That's such a wonderful way to wrap this. And just remind, the great reminder that we are all works in progress, that we have to continuously sit with the discomfort, because that is exactly where we'll grow, no matter how painful, no matter how scary, and at different stages of our lives. So we'll just continuously be on that journey. But just talking to you just has, really, truly given me a lot of hope, that, this is worth the journey, that despite everything, there is someone else is going through something as well. We are on our unique journeys, and we may not really be able to relate to everything, but just knowing that we're doing it together, that's just really beautiful, and that should keep us going as well. And for the next generation, for our kids, for our nieces, for our daughters.
And it's okay to be penat lah, sis. It's okay.
It's okay. Got it. It's okay. Be penat, but kita teruskan perjalanan. Perjuangan. Yes, I love that. Teruskan perjuangan. Thank you so much, Kak Oni, for agreeing to do this, for being here, for taking the time to share your story, for being vulnerable and allowing yourself to just be open and honest so that all of us can listen to this and take all of what you've shared, and grow.
I think I should thank you for this opportunity for me to unpack a lot of things. And I want to wish you a blessed Ramadan ahead. I hope you enjoy Ramadan as much as I'm looking forward to it.
I am really looking forward to Ramadan. I really am. It's just, I always look forward to Ramadan. It's just, but I saying that, I also recognize there are some people who are anxious about going to Ramadan. So whatever it is that you feel about Ramadan, I pray and I hope that we'll all have a blessed and wonderful Ramadan. To everyone who's watching, selamat berpuasa to you, Kak Oni. Have a wonderful Ramadan. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.